Hello, my name is Tucker Johnson, and I am coming to you live via the Nimsy Insights channels here. We should be live on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and a bunch of those other stuff. I'm doing a little stress test here to make sure that this is all working all good here, because my recent live streams have not done so well, so I thought I'd do a little introduction or a little bonus piece of content here on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, on all of these different things. And even as I'm saying this, it looks like the LinkedIn isn't working. So it looks like let's try this again, shall we? For those of you on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, you guys are going to get to be patient while I turn this off and I turn it back on. And we'll see if the LinkedIn works now. So, what we are doing today, we are going to be discussing, is kind of something new. We haven't done this before, but it's something that I've been meaning to do for a long time, which is taking a look at some of the latest geopolitical and geocultural things going on in the world right now. This is a topic that we cover quite a bit here at MZ Insights, but we don't talk about it a whole lot here at MZ Insights just because of the sensitive nature of some of the challenges that we discuss. There's a lot of crazy stuff happening in the world, and there's a lot of crazy opinions around those things in the world. But we do here at MZ Insights run a bi-weekly group. It's a private group that we moderate. We gather the latest things going on in the world that you need to know if you are working in globalization, whether you are on the vendor side and you need to be up to date on what's going on in the world so that you can better advise your clients, whether you're on the client side and you're a leader in the international department and need to be a thought leader for your internal stakeholders and let the C-suite know what's going on in the world. So we run this group. It's called the Geocultural Group, and essentially the mission is to unleash stronger global organizations and operations through awareness of these issues. So if that's something that you're interested in finding out more about, then let us know. Reach out to us, info@nimsy.com. Today we had the main topic that we were looking into was trade schools versus four-year colleges. We had an excellent conversation around what is the effect of shifts in the academic landscape that are going on, especially since COVID in the last couple of years, and how has that affected our industry, the localization industry? How has that affected global businesses? What does that look like around the world in different countries with the shifting educational systems? But that's really not what I wanted to get through today. Today I just kind of want to keep it short and sweet, and we're going to get into our other news section because we have a whole bunch of stuff, everything, a couple stories out of Scotland. We're going to talk about Scotland, indigenous tribes in Scotland, menstruation, and women's access to healthcare in Scotland, Muslim concerns with the Muslim community and their rights to wear religious headpieces. In India, we're going to be looking at a couple stories out of China. As always, some South Korean news, which is really interesting. Taking a look back at Gangnam Style. Remember Gangnam Style and the effects that has had on the world and on South Korea's role in the entertainment industry, in the global entertainment industry. We got some news about sign language and how that has shifted in the era of Zoom. And of course, we're going to be looking at quickly some stuff out of Ukraine, as we usually do on these bi-weekly calls these days. So we'll skip through the trade school versus four-year college and get right into other news here. And for those, I need to do this. This is not primary research. This is think of this as an aggregation of content and copy available out there from other sources. So I'm going to, hi Glenda, how are ya? I should bring comments up on screen. How are you, Glenda? I'm going to drop a link right now into the chat, and if I can get over there on LinkedIn, because I think I have to do it privately on LinkedIn, I'm going to drop a link into the chat, and this is going to be a Google Doc. Oh, there it is. I saw it come up on screen, but I'm going to do it one more time here in the native platform, just so I can make sure everybody has it. So this is a link to a Google Doc where I've copied over all of the sources that we're going to be going through today. Also, make sure to check out Multilingual Magazine, because Multilingual Magazine is doing a great job of covering topics like this, and topics that you guys need to know about around the world. That's multilingual.com. We have the online magazine that is published every month. It is a monthly magazine now after years and years of being bi-monthly. The team over there has made it go monthly. And it is also a print magazine. And I know they're running some specials right now. You can basically get it for free with a bunch of other goodies. We publish books. There's all sorts of stuff. They've got gift boxes and platinum packages. So go over to multilingual.com or send an email to info@multilingual.com if you want to find out more about that, because it's really a good resource that you should be aware of. So links, sources in the comments, a link in the description, multilingual.com. For more information. I think I've covered all my bases here, so let's get into it. And other news in geocultural and geopolitical awareness. Our first story today is out of Scotland. Scotland is making period products free. So period products are free now to anyone who's in Scotland who needs them. This initiative makes Scotland the first country in the world to provide free sanitary products, which is part of a global effort to end quote-unquote period poverty. Period poverty is defined as a lack of access to tampons or sanitary pads because of prohibitively high costs. Period products would be available at libraries, swimming pools, public gyms, community buildings, town halls, pharmacies, and doctors' offices. Monica Lennon, the lawmaker who submitted the draft proposal for the Period Products Act in 2020, tweeted that Scotland might be, quote, the first but won't be the last, end quote, country to provide free period products. She told the New York Times, quote, we are witnessing a massive culture change where period stigma is no longer being tolerated. There is more emphasis on menstrual well-being and a renewed focus on tackling medical misogyny, end quote. In the United States, a 2021 study by George Mason University showed that 14% of women attending college experienced period poverty in 2020. The study found that Latina and Black women were disproportionately affected. Now, my thought was I was going to provide commentary on each one of these, but I don't think there's much to say, and especially on this topic for me, I need a female co-host for these things. Volunteer in the comments, please. But yeah, great news out of Scotland, leading the way for progressive access to much needed products for women, menstruators in Scotland. Our next story is also out of Scotland, and you will get to hear me mispronounce a bunch of names today, so bear with me. But Nisga'a's delegation heads to Scotland in a bid to repatriate totem pole. Members of the Nisga'a First Nation are traveling to Scotland in a bid to repatriate a memorial totem pole taken from their land almost a century ago and later sold to the country's national museum by a colonial ethnographer Marius Barbeau. The Nisga'a memorial pole is, and once again, links in the description if you want to learn how to pronounce these things, is a living constitutional and visual archive, said Knox's Tsawat. Dr. Amy Parent would be her English Western chosen name, I'm assuming, a Canada Research Chair in Indigenous Education and Government at Simon Fraser University, and part of the delegation heading to Scotland. It is a house pole carved and erected in the 1860s and tells the story of Tsawat, a warrior who was next in line to be chief before he was killed in a conflict with a neighboring nation. Barbeau took the pole without the consent of the House Nishul, one of around 50 houses within the Nisga'a Nation, during a period when the Nisga'a were away from their villages for the annual hunting, fishing, and harvesting season. In 2007, the United Kingdom voted to support the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, part of which calls for the repatriation of ceremonial objects. So those are two stories out of Scotland. One in regards to healthcare access, in a way, for women, and another in regards to Indigenous peoples and repatriating Indigenous peoples' property. Two very important issues to be aware of. Our next story is out of India. As India turns 75, Muslim girls are suing to wear the hijab and protect secularism. So, in early February, and India certainly isn't the first, it won't be the last country to experience this particular challenge. I know we were talking a lot about France last year, I believe, in our biweekly call that we hold, our think tank discussion group, whatever you want to call it. So this is essentially an issue where countries are banning religious paraphernalia, religious clothing, religious items. I think in France they were banning it in schools specifically. But let's see what we have here coming out of India. In early February, parents of all the Muslim students at a public high school in southwest India were called into a meeting. The principal told them their daughters could no longer wear the hijab, or Muslim headscarf, in class. They'd have to remove it or stay home from school. The principal told them it was part of a new dress code after lots of Muslim girls returned to in-person classes wearing headscarves, which they hadn't worn before the pandemic. Authorities shut schools in the area just a few days after the principal's announcements to prevent violence. 2 days later, the whole state of Karnataka, governed by Modi's Hindu nationalist oh my gosh, I need to practice these names next time before I do this. Bear with me, folks. This is the first time I'm doing this. Next time, I promise to practice these names. Modi's Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party banned headscarves and any religious garb in all public schools. In addition to hijabs, the ban also covered saffron shawls, other types of scarves, and religious flags. Officials later clarified that Sikh turbans would still be allowed. Interesting. A class action case is currently pending in India's Supreme Court to affirm the right of Muslim women to wear headscarves in all of the country's public schools. More than 1 in 6 Indians is Muslim. They're the biggest minority in this Hindu-majority country. Discrimination and attacks, including lynchings against Muslims, have surged across India in recent years, particularly since Modi first rose to leadership. In its latest report, the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom condemned such violence as systematic, ongoing, and egregious violations of religious freedoms in India. So what do you guys think about this out there? Inform me. We've got some Indian team members here at NIMSY Insights. I know there's a lot of folks that follow NIMSY Insights out there. Let me know in the comments what we think about this. And these subjects are all very nuanced, right? I'm not trying to present one side or another side of the story here. Once again, head on over to that link that I dropped in the comments. What you're going to see is a Google Doc like this where we're going to link to all of our sources. And if nothing else, I'd like you guys to take away from this today, hey, I need to find out more, right? So I am not the news, but I am telling you what news is important for you to go find out more about. So if you can walk away a little bit inspired for that, then I think I've done my job. Moving over to China. In China, the bad guys turn good in alternative Minions movie ending. Many of you know that entertainment companies, I know that American entertainment companies will all often have different edits or different cuts for international offices. This is not a big secret. It's been going on for a while. cutting out things that may potentially be offensive or changing things. And it has gotten all the easier these days, especially with the rise of streaming and over-the-top OTT broadcasting to update entertainment on the fly. And this is a trend that we're watching pretty closely here at NIMSY because it has interesting implications for the future of entertainment around the world. But let's take a look at this. In the 5th installment of the lucrative Despicable Me franchise, Minions: The Rise of Gru premiered in China this month, several weeks after the film opened in the United States cinemas. I didn't even know that there was a new Minions movie out. Gosh, yeah, it's like the Fast and the Furious. They just keep pumping these things out. Seriously, thank God. I need to thank God. I've got my little princess back there watching Disney while I do this, but at least she doesn't like Minions. That's all I'm saying. A series of subtitled still images inserted into the credits sequence on mainland Chinese screens reassures audiences that police catch Gru's law-breaking mentor, Wild Knuckles, and lock him up for 20 years after a failed heist. So no getting away for the bad guys in China. International viewers simply see Knuckles give police the slip by faking his death earlier in the film's concluding scene. But in the Chinese version, he puts his con artist skills to positive use in prison, where he follows his quote-unquote love of acting and sets up a theatrical troupe. As for Gru, he eventually became one of the good guys, devoted to raising his family, the Chinese ending says. Oh, I see what's going on. So they lock him up. Oh, okay, so they actually lock him up in the American edition. But in China, he gets a little redemption arc. Oh, isn't that nice? It's not clear if it was altered due to the censor's demands or a producer saw it as a more palatable conclusion for the Chinese market. Well, now I kind of want to go watch Despicable Me, Minions: The Rise of Gru. So go check that out. Let us know what you think about it. All right, we already talked about India. Let's head on over to South Korea. The Door Opened by Gangnam Style. The global hit Gangnam Style primed Western audiences for films and shows about South Korea as a dystopia. Psy was not an obvious pop cultural ambassador. At the time of the release of Gangnam Style, he was a 34-year-old Berklee College of Music dropout, unknown outside Korea, and censored more than once in Korea for both his musical content and personal conduct. The singer, rapper, jokester seemed to exist in a reality apart from K-pop, with its impeccably turned-out young performers. Organized into boy bands and girl groups, precision-engineered for international appeal. Yet it was he, not 2NE1 or SHINee, not Wonder Girls, not Big Bang. I'm sorry, guys, I don't know my K-pop. That might come up at trivia night one night, so I should probably freshen up on my K-pop knowledge. But I guess these are K-pop BAMs. 2NE1, SHINee, not Wonder Girls, Big Bang, who finally cracked the West. BTS came only a year later, so BTS was after Psy. Psy did it with what amounted to a Korean inside joke. His big hit lampoons the garish and culturally incongruous pretensions of Seoul's nouveau riche, a class in evidence nowhere more so than Gangnam. So, 15 years. Is that right? 15 years? Was that 15 years it says? Some years ago. It seems like 15 years ago that Psy came out with Gangnam Style. I know it wasn't 15 years ago. Let's move into... Oh, lovely. I love talking about this. Let's move into American Sign Language, shall we? So, how a visual language evolves as our world does. And I just want to get the source on this, right? This is out of the New York Times, and also we have some credit due to IBM Research as well on this. So, out of the New York Times, ubiquitous video technology and social media have given deaf people a new way to communicate. They're using it to transform American Sign Language. My two daughters' sign language, quoting from Elin Jakobowitz, who is 69-year-old former president of the American Sign Language Teachers Association. She says, my two daughters sign in such a small space. And I'm like, can you please stretch it out a little? We chat on FaceTime sometimes, and their hands are so crunched up to fit on the tiny phone screen. And I'm like, what are you saying? End quote. From the beginning, signs that were more complex or crossed more zones of the body have tended to fall out of favor, experts said, but small screens appear to be accelerating that trend, both by encouraging tighter gestures and giving the new versions a way to spread quickly, just like a new dance move would on TikTok. Many LGBTQ people who are deaf have used a gender-neutral sign for parents for years, alongside versions of the word parent that involve mom or dad twice. One older sign for quote-unquote privilege could also mean quote-unquote benefit, gain, credit, or profit. It looks like putting $1 into a shirt pocket. A newer sign visually represents someone being raised up or put ahead, and it's reminiscent of the ASL sign for inequality. So let me read that again. One older sign for privilege could also mean benefit, gain, credit, or profit. So this older sign, you would sign the word privilege the same way that you would sign benefit, you would sign gain, credit, profit. And it's going to look like this, and putting $1 into a shirt pocket. Don't, my ASL followers, please correct me on that. And so this is being replaced by a newer sign that visually represents someone being raised up or put ahead, and is reminiscent of the ASL sign for inequality. That's really interesting. Next, pandemic and the rise of Zoom and TikTok, I should say. It's not just affecting American Sign Language, it's affecting the way that we understand speech. Oh, so this is out of IBM Research. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, we've been inundated with words and situations that were uncommon to many people before then. We've been in lockdowns, maintained social distance, worn masks, and taken vaccines and boosters, and have been talking about these topics seemingly nonstop. Life has looked very different for most people since the start of the pandemic, and new research suggests that it has even altered the way we understand certain words. The study shows how likely we are to perceive these newly common words as a result of the pandemic, to the point that... Okay, my daughter wants to ask me one question. Yes, Sweet Pig. Yes, you can have it. Bye. The study, I told you we were doing this impromptu today. Apologies for that. The study shows how likely we are to perceive these newly common words as a result of the pandemic, to the point that we expect to hear words like like mask and isolation, even when a different but similar sounding word is actually spoken. The experiments use the phonemic restoration tasks to test what words listeners understand when they hear something ambiguous. So remember the Yanni versus Laurel? I think that's what we're talking about here. They play the sound, and some people heard Yanni, some people heard Laurel. We wrote about it on NEMSI back in the day. So this works by recording a full word, for example, knockdown, and then removing one sound from the recording. Here, the initial KN sound. Then we replace the deleted KN sound with a noise. Participants were asked what word they heard when they listened to the now incomplete and ambiguous recording. All the words we recorded were one sound away from a COVID-related word, such as knockdown instead of lockdown and task instead of mask. So not a lot of surprise for me here is the more that you hear certain words, the more that you're going to hear certain words. You know, if you own a blue car, you're going to see blue cars everywhere. If you're always talking about lockdowns, you're going to hear lockdown instead of knockdown. So, very interesting story. Thank you, IBM Research, for that. Moving on into Ukraine. Ukraine recently celebrated Independence Day, and unfortunately it was marked by a deadly missile strike. So, Ukraine Independence Day, which on August 24th marked the 31st anniversary of the country when the country voted to break from the Soviet Union, has been a more somber affair this year, with officials attending memorials. The day was darkened by a missile strike on an eastern Ukraine train station, which killed at least 22 people, fulfilling warnings by Ukrainian officials. And this story is out of Reuters on August 23rd. Check the links for the sources. While previous years have been marked by celebrations and parades, Wednesday's commemoration comes exactly 6 months after Russia's invasion of the country began. President Volodymyr Zelensky marked the day with an emotional address that spoke of the Russian invasion as a new Independence Day, the day Ukraine had to fight for its freedom rather than simply voting for it at the ballot box. A new nation emerged on February 24th at 4 a.m., not born but reborn, and this is a quote from Zelensky. A nation that didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't get scared, didn't run away, didn't give up, didn't forget. End quote. Across the country, Ukrainians paid tribute to those who have been killed in military action since the invasion began. Foreign leaders, such as UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, also visited Kiev. Zelensky had also warned that Russia might step up efforts to launch attacks, including missile strikes, on, quote, infrastructure, facilities, or state institutions, end quote, around the holiday. The U.S. government joined the chorus of concern, telling Americans on Tuesday to leave the country immediately. That was America's contribution. Good job, America. All right. Moving out of Ukraine, back over into China here. China-U.S. relations. U.S. is adding 7 Chinese aerospace and chip firms to the export blacklist. And for those of you in this industry, I'm presuming most of my audience is in the localization, globalization industry. Many of you are very well aware of blacklist sanctions and the like. So this is a new one to add to your list to be aware of. And this is out of South China Morning Post. There's a publication from this. State-affiliated institutions involving a chip development and space program join around 600 other Chinese entities in the list. The move comes weeks after U.S. President Joe Biden signed a law to bolster American semiconductor industry. U.S. companies will need an export license to sell to 7 Chinese state-affiliated firms in the aerospace and chip sector after Washington blacklisted them on Wednesday for supporting China's efforts to modernize its military. The U.S. Commerce Department said in a statement on Tuesday that it would add 4 research institutes under a Chinese space agency, 2 under a state-owned military technology firm, and a satellite firm to its export blacklist. The list, which is known officially as the Entity List, includes around 600 Chinese firms deemed to be operating against U.S. national security and foreign policy interests. That's out of China, U.S.-China relations. Keeping with our China theme, for those of you who don't know, that China has a zero-COVID policy. Zero COVID policy. Let's see what effect that's having in Nepal. So China's zero COVID policy turns Nepal border towns into dead zones as trade routes dry up. Nepal's 1,389-kilometer-long border with China is closed to the country's exporters, though a trickle of Chinese goods continues to flow the other way. China's border restrictions have disrupted bilateral trade, created uncertainty among Nepali importers, and affected indigenous communities. China has kept its borders tightly sealed even as much of the world has reopened over the past year, leaving a backlog of trucks and mounds of rotting fruit stuck at checkpoints it shares with neighboring countries, such as Vietnam and Myanmar. Nepal's long border with China, including the 2 main crossings, has been closed. I'm not going to pronounce this word, sorry. Including the 2 main crossings, has been closed to the country's exporters for the last 2 years, though a trickle of Chinese goods has been allowed to flow the other way. All right, we got a copy there. Most of Nepal's exports are snapped up by India, so the Chinese market is not considered crucial, but the border restrictions have severely disrupted bilateral trade, stoked business uncertainty, and affected indigenous communities and farmers who rely on cross-border commerce for their livelihoods, researchers say. Experts and researchers say. And that brings us to the end of my list of topics that we're going to talk about today. Once again, this has been an excerpt from the think tank that I was just taking part in, helping to moderate just less than a couple hours ago. We do it every other Friday here at NIMSY Insights. We have it's a closed group for leadership level localization professionals in the localization industry on the client side. So I need to come up with a quicker way to say that. It's client side senior leaders who join this group. It's a confidential group. We get together. We discuss ongoing issues. It's called the NIMSY Geocultural Group. We talk about market intelligence, language intelligence, geopolitical intelligence, and cultural intelligence, and how it affects the work, how it affects the practical work that we do here every day. So that was your taste of the Geocultural Group today. Let me know in the comments. I didn't announce this. This wasn't a scheduled event. I just decided to hit that go live button. But let me know if you like this. Do you want to hear more of this? We're putting together this information. We're doing the research here at NIMSY anyway. So if you guys want to hear more of this, then maybe we can start doing some more. Maybe I can get a co-host on here who can actually pronounce some words correctly. But in the meantime, thank you for Oh, I should bring up these comments here. Oh my goodness, there are people actually talking to me. Comments. Let's see. Who do we have talking to us today? I want to give some shout outs before we just dive out of here. Chat, Glenda, thank you for joining. Mohammed, thank you for joining. Dario, love it. Oscar, love it. Good to see you all. Thank you all for joining, even though I just didn't even announce this. It's always makes it more fun when people join. So with that, once again, my name is Tucker Johnson, and this has been NIMSY Live News, where we talk about the latest and greatest in geocultural and geopolitical events from around the world, topics that we, as thought leaders in the globalization, localization, internationalization space, need to know to lead our brands, organizations, clients into this new century, this new world that we live in, without, like I always say, I'm trying to think of a nicer way to say this, without pissing off our clients too much. So with that, you guys all have a happy Friday. Go grab a pint. You've earned it. Cheers.